Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Oshrik Vox, and a lot of cartoons have ended in recent years. Cartoons with overarching stories, huge followings, and a notable presence on their network or streaming service. The thing is, with a lot of these animated series, I always see one common complaint whenever they come to a close. One magical sentence: this finale felt rushed. It's a funny word when you apply it to media because a lot of things can be rushed in different ways. Cartoon finales are no exception. In fact, they're perfect for the subject. So today, I want to take a look at these popular animated finales that a majority of viewers labeled as rushed. Now, rushed does not necessarily mean bad. You can have a good finale yet still feel as if it's rushed. In fact, I think a lot of fans feel that way with a lot of these shows. I'm also going to do my best to keep my personal bias out of these, but I'm going to be honest. Trying to remove any kind of bias when critiquing media, especially with a topic as subjective as this, is pretty much impossible. I'll be looking at things from a neutral stance, but part of a personal critique is, well, personality. So if I say anything too outlandish about your favorite cartoon finale, please let's just try to agree to disagree and have a dialogue in the comment section below. Also, I will be discussing Steven Universe Change Your Mind as one of the examples. Even though it's not the series finale, the Crew Universe has been vocal that it was the end of Rebecca Sugar's original outline for the show. It's retroactively not the end, but at one point, it was clearly intended to be the last hurrah. After this, we're done, no more. And then Carnera came along and said, money though. With that said, let's get this party started, and let's actually look at Steven Universe Change Your Mind for the very first one. A lot of people feel as if Change Your Mind was rushed for a lack of build-up. This happens quite often in media. You get to the climax of a film or video game, where suddenly things just kick up to 100 without the proper building blocks necessary to have the viewer totally invested and feeling the exact same emotions our main characters are enduring. Instead, they just kind of throw you in. And while there are cool and shock factors to everything, you can't just help but to feel as if there should have been more before getting to this point. So how does Change Your Mind meet this criteria? Now, I'm aware a lot of people feel as if Blue and Yellow Diamond's turns were a bit more sudden, but honestly, I do believe their progressions were natural. Blue Diamond always had a soft spot for Pink. It is very clear that there are a few things in life that she loves as much as Pink. So when she realized she was the one responsible for Pink Diamond feeling like hot doo-doo garbage, of course she's going to have a breakdown and listen to Steven. As for Yellow Diamond, we see throughout the series that she's constantly concealing her emotions, repressing everything and pushing it further and further. So once Blue Diamond and Steven finally call her out on her suffering, she breaks. And once she finally breaks, she's finally ready to listen. So yeah, I don't believe their big moments were rushed, even if it does happen within the first 11 minutes of a 44-minute episode. What I do want to focus on is the giant sequence where Steven fuses with all 3 crystal gems and White Diamond's attitude towards Steven in the episode. Now, a lot of people feel as if the scene of Steven fusing with every gem was nothing more than fan service, and they crammed it all in here just to say they did it, because if it was a final episode, they wanted to be able to just say, yeah, we did it. But that actually isn't true. Rebecca Sugar revealed on the Steven Universe podcast that Steven fusing with the gems in this one prolonged sequence was the idea of Ian Jones-Cordy. While I'm sure being the final episode at the time played a role in everything, it was Ian who proposed the concept of Steven fusing with every gem in this big set piece where they're all falling, and Steven catches every gem by fusing and unfusing with them. The Crew Universe didn't think it would work, and Rebecca said, hey Ian, if you can draw it, we'll do it. Long story short, he could draw it, and the rest is history. Now, I think the problem here, if you can even call it a problem, I mean, look at these fusions. This is one of the most hypest things ever. But I think the reason a lot of people had problems with it was because Steven fusing with Pearl and Garnet was so sudden, as opposed to being properly built up like it was with Steven's first gem fusion, Amethyst. At the tail end of season 3, we had a string of episodes dedicated to Amethyst in the midst of the Jasper arc. Jasper, as an antagonist, furthered Amethyst's development as a character. character. This focus on Amethyst and seeing everything through the lens of Steven made it an absolutely satisfying and perfect payoff when the two fused into Smoky Quartz. Now, throughout Season 5, we certainly got Garnet development, and as always, sprinkles of Pearl development, but I can't really say either of the two accumulated into their fusions. Because in hindsight, the development of those two characters didn't come into play in the moment Steven fused with them. He fused with them because he wanted to save them and because he loved them, which really could have happened with these characters at any point after Season 3. Like if he had the Crystal Gems poofed and falling and Steven had to fuse with all of them, that didn't have to happen and change your mind. It could have happened anywhere and it still would have been as sudden. That being said, it's certainly more gratifying to see it happen after all of this development, after Garnet's wedding, after Pearl finally being able to speak freely about Rose Quartz being Pink Diamond. But that's not even the bigger fish to fry, no. If we're frying any fish, it's going to be White Diamond. Now, I personally feel as if the show did already write themselves in a corner with this character by finally name-dropping her in the same episode she debuts in, which is at the end of what was going to be at one point the final season. Whereas we got to see glimpses of the other diamonds and had their presence known ever since Season 2, or Season 1 if you want to count the yellow diamond name dropped at the end, White Diamond was kept as a great mystery. It was obvious she existed, fans knew she was there, we had her mural, but the show didn't even incorporate her into flashbacks until the 5th season. Once Steven finally set foot on Homeworld, the show finally began to slowly give us White Diamond. And I gotta say, on that aspect, her reveal was great. But you know, it almost makes me wish she appeared sooner, because outside of Steven's nightmare sequence and the fact that she's controlling White Pearl, we only have one scene with White Diamond before Change Your Mind, and that's the end of Lecture at a Homeworld, her debut scene, where she's kind of belittling to Steven, but has a certain air about her where you know something's off, but you can't exactly put your finger on what. She seems overjoyed that Pink Diamond is quote-unquote alive with Steven, and then she sends Steven off to Pink Diamond's room. And then when we see her in Change Your Mind, she's just very condescending. She's coming at Steven's neck. She breaks the Crystal Gem's knees. Oh, what are you doing crawling in here, you little shit? You want your legs back? You want your planet back? Too fucking bad. It's like, whoa. How do we go from this Lecture at a Homeworld to this in Change Your Mind? It's like there was an entire middle episode with White Diamond's development that we just skipped over. She just snapped into crazy bitch mode and we were just kind of expected to roll with it. I mean, I did, I was scared shitless, but it was just so sudden. That being said, everything else in the episode wasn't rushed at all. The other Crystal Gems coming in clutch, seeing Lapis and Paradox new forms. Debatably, Obsidian by themselves is an incredible reveal that was properly built up to just because it is the climax. This would be the perfect scenario to use Obsidian. You didn't need the other fusions to happen for this to happen at this exact moment. And the entire sequence of Pink Steven was in no way, shape, or form rushed. That was properly built up since day one. And it had me smiling like an absolute idiot when it finally happened. A moment where Steven can find himself. The ultimate fusion dance. It could not have happened any sooner in the series. It had to happen then. But because we had these other two components of this special that didn't have the proper setup to them and just blindsided the audience, people felt that it was rushed. Now, there's a bit more focus on Steven's relationships with Pearl and Garnet throughout the Diamond Days arc. It's kind of there together alone, but not really. Alongside just one more episode of White Diamond to show that shift in her personality, then I think Change Your Mind would be universally well received, as opposed to just an episode people love, but they feel it's a little rushed. Personally, while I do agree that it's rushed to an extent, it just doesn't faze me. However, a show like Steven Universe that's formatted in arts and it's all about build-up and grand revelations should have probably known they would have gotten some sort of pushback for doing this really awesome thing very suddenly with no build-up. Like if Change Your Mind was the end, I actually don't believe this episode would have been as loved as it is. It probably would have actually had a lot more people saying it's rushed. But you guys are already well aware that I talk about Steven enough on this channel. So let's move on to our next point. Dangling plot threads. And I think a good example of this would be a show that I also talk about way too much on this channel. Star vs. the Forces of Evil with its series finale, Cleaved. To get to the point, series finales should be conclusive, and Stars was not conclusive. I accept it as an ending, I enjoyed the episode, I think it's a good episode, but I absolutely do not believe that it's anywhere near conclusive. Now, I don't even mean that I needed every single lingering mystery in the series to be answered. I didn't. I literally mean that this finale literally sets up plot threads within the episode itself that do not get answered. They kinda just get glossed over. For example, Star destroying magic. That is a huge deal, and it's kinda just glossed over here. The episode doesn't shy away from anything. Marco immediately addresses to Hegapoo that she's made out of magic, so by assisting them destroy magic, she's assisting them in her own demise. And yeah, she's cool with it, but like, that's all? We know for certain that Glossaryck and the Magic High Commission are toast. Glossaryck says himself that every good captain goes down with their ship, and we see the corpses of Rhymbolus and Omnitraxus Prime, but who else perished at the destruction of magic? This is something I speculated on in my Muni Mayhem series, but you know what? Now's not the time for theorizing. So many characters in Star were debatably either made of magic or depended on magic. What happens to them? We see Ponyhead fly at the end of the episode. So that's just a natural ability that the Ponyheads could do without magic. Fly. Well, does she have any more abilities that she can still do without magic? They don't explore this, and I really feel like they should have. There's this entire scene where Tom's under the influence of magic, and Marco has to fight him using Star's wand, and when Marco's finally able to bring Tom to his senses, he gets completely stabbed, just straight up impaled by the dark mill horse that Tom was riding, which in return gives Marco this giant purple wound of pure dark magic. And they even have like a dramatic little music cue as it happens, and he just zips up his hoodie and you're like, oh my god, something's going to happen to Marco. Either he's going to fall under the influence of dark magic, or maybe it'll prevent him from returning to Earth when magic is collapsing, and what happens is, nothing. This plot point is introduced in the finale and never goes anywhere. We see later that the wound is gone, and apparently Marco was repeatedly stating, a unicorn stabbed me before passing out again. So is it just gone because magic is gone? Did it go within Marco? I'm so confused. Realistically, the wound just kind of dissipated and was rendered ineffective because magic was destroyed. As another plot line from the previous episodes that carried over to this finale was the fact that many characters got wounded with a Solarian blade. And if they weren't cured soon with the destruction of magic, they would all just blow up. Yeah, that's pretty dark. So I get what we're supposed to infer, but like, why was this ever a thing then? Again, it literally goes nowhere. Marco's never weakened for the rest of the finale, nothing big ever happens with it. They drew attention to it for nothing. Another major plot thread that they introduced within literally the final like 2 minutes of the series that completely changes the status quo is the fact that Earth, where Marco is from, and Muni, where Star is from, becomes intertwined or cleaved into one big dimension. This proposes a lot of questions, and instead of even remotely exploring this, we just get the credits like, no, wait, stop scrolling, come back. What is going on here? How does this world operate now? Is it gonna be a monarch, democracy? Are humans gonna go to high school? Are high schoolers gonna drop out and become knights? Like, I need to know more. There are humans, and monsters now. Monsters that vary in all different shapes and sizes. If anything, Earth and Muni should have been cleaved after Star and Marco parted ways in the realm of magic, which I'm not entirely sure why a random portal just formed on both dimensions and then exploded into one big dimension. So then that way the final 10 minutes of the series could have incorporated more of exploring this new status quo and just giving us some more concrete answers. Now, I don't necessarily blame the team behind the show. It's very likely that higher-ups were like, nah, you're not getting any more time, 23 minutes, make it work. I also blame Disney Channel for the momentum of this finale. You see, 2 years ago in 2017, the third season of Star began with a TV movie called Battle for Muni, which was 4 episodes from the episode's Return to Muni up until the half-hour episode Toffee in 1 2-hour block. Darren F.C. explained at the Gallery Nucleus Farewell to Muni event that the final few episodes of Star were truly connected Battle for Muni style, which I assume means when they were working on these final string of episodes, they probably thought Disney is going to air this as a 2-hour TV movie again. Because when you look at the final few episodes, not only are they connected, but they have these giant set pieces that when you combine them all together, definitely feels like a finale. Like Star forming a giant kaiju out of Aura. The fact Mina Loveberry pulls up with a giant army. Star and Marco getting together as a full romantic couple. And yes, the destruction of magic. I believe this was all meant to be consumed in a 2-hour block. But then Disney Channel decided, nah, we're not going to air this weekly. We're not going to air this in a 2-hour block. What we're going to do is just air 2 episodes a week, but because that leaves an uneven number, the last episode is just going to air by itself in a half-hour time slot instead of the hour time slot we've been doing each week, and fans are just going to have to accept it and love it. Instead of watching the third act of a TV movie, we just watch the isolated half hour of a bigger finale. Does that totally negate any of the critiques I brought up here? No, but it did change the way we consume the show. And in that, it gave viewers a different experience than what they expected. Now, Star fans have been rallying for some sort of continuation, a 5th season, a TV movie, a graphic novel. There's a huge petition that has thousands upon thousands of signatures. If I remember, I'll link that in the description. Don't introduce like 3 big plot threads that don't get concrete answers in your final episode of a half hour. Of course, people are going to say it's rushed. Let's forget about concluding everything that came before this episode. You didn't even conclude the things that were set up in this episode. But again, I still love the finale. I think it's fine. Does it leave a lot to be left desired? Yeah, but when I was watching it, I wasn't just thinking, that was it? I was just thinking, oh, that's a cute ending. I'm content. But what about when you aren't satisfied? When you aren't content? What happens when a finale to bed so hard, you cannot even fathom that this is a thing they've made? That takes us to our next one. Underwhelming finales, where everything in the episode, to the premise itself, does not even feel like it's worthy of being a finale. You guys may already know the example for this one, The Amazing World of Gumball's The Inquisition. Now this point onward might be a bit shorter than the rest, just because we've already talked about the Gumball finale so many times, and I'm gonna repeat myself a bit, but the premise of The Inquisition is not a good premise for the Gumball finale. It does serve as a good commentary on live action reboots and adapting, avoiding cancellation, the end is always inevitable, so on and so forth. But none of that negates the fact that it's centered in the school, and only the school. We only have Gumball's classmates to play off of, and the big gimmick for the episode is that the antagonist, who was just Rob in disguise, is this live-action old man who's trying to turn everyone into live-action human beings. Again, it's a cool concept, but when I think of the end of Gumball, I would have never guessed this in the worst way possible. None of the Watterson family appear except for Gumball and Darwin for obvious reasons. None of the lovable goofy neighbors. It's just Gumball, Darwin, and their classmates. Like, I certainly may have missed an episode, but doesn't Anais also go to that school? Where was she? How did they screw up so bad? I just don't get it! But avoiding this video becoming a screaming contest for, I don't know, views and likes and laughs, cheap laughs, I get that this episode is really more or less just a prologue for the hypothetical Gumball movie, which I'm not sure if I want to explain again why that's such a horrible idea. Let's immortalize the final episode of this series for something that doesn't even exist. And even if this ever does exist, this is still the final episode, the final 11 minutes. And Gumball has had 2-part episodes before. So again, they really couldn't have cut any other episodes this season to make this a 2-part finale, or I don't know, just make 4 or 5 episodes the movie they've been wanting to do. I thought I would never say this about Gumball, but the finale just seems kind of lazy, making the final episode of one of Cartoon Network's most popular series just an advertisement for a movie that may or may not come out. If we do this, they have to make it. No, they don't. I'm not going to say that was actually their mindset making this episode, as a creator has even came out and said, yeah, it wasn't my idea to end the finale like that, but if we do the movie, everything will have a satisfying conclusion, which, like, alright, I believe you. The finale of a show should highlight everything about the show. Its premise, its core concepts, its characters, especially its core characters of the Larson family, and more or less bring everything full circle. Gumball's finale didn't even attempt to do that because, again, it's a trailer for a movie that may not even come out. But let's shift gears to another Cartoon Network titan for our next example. Cramming in plot points. With Adventure Time's Come Along With Me. Now, it's always weird to hear that this finale is rushed because it's the length of 4 episodes. Like, this is an hour-long finale with commercials, 44 minutes without it. That's still a lot of runtime with a lot to do. So, what's the problem? Well, Adventure Time's finale starts with one premise, beyond its framing device disturbing in Beth in the distant future, with our heroes going to war with Princess Bubblegum's uncle Gumball, as he assembles a league of villains that appear throughout the show's history. This was a fake out. Not only does the war go anywhere, but pretty much this finale is really 2 separate half-hour episodes with 2 separate plots. The first 22 minutes of the finale is really just to give Finn and Fern closure, alongside giving Princess Bubblegum some kind of development, and Jake is, well, Jake is being Jake, but then it just pivots at the end of its second segment and brings in Golb out of nowhere, who, similar to White Diamond, was an antagonist we've seen before. We knew Golb existed, but there wasn't really any proper build-up to him in the final episodes, but at the same time, he's a mindless deity hell-bent on destruction, so, we don't really need it. But it was weird because Golb didn't really have any personal stakes in relation to our characters. Golb was just a force that they had to stop. And it's not like Finn and Jake stopped Golb. They both just kind of get kicked to the curb whenever you think they're gonna do something cool. Really, it's Marceline and Betty who saved the day. Which, I don't mind, I mean, they're both cool characters. Marceline and Bubblegum kissing was mwah. Literally. But they could have figured out a way to give both Finn and Jake a moment of triumph, where they are the ones instrumental in saving the day. The show's full name is Adventure Time with Finn and Jake. How did we get so far removed? A lot of fans feel as if the Lich should have returned instead of Golb, and I wholeheartedly agree. Honestly, looking back on it, it would have been fine if they just didn't use Golb at all. Like, yeah, maybe he would have retroactively became a wasted opportunity, but the way I see it, it would be a great commentary that chaos and evil will always exist in the world. We as people just gotta do our best to not be scummy, to not be evil. That the chaos and discord in the world won't have any power if we don't fuel the flames. So yes, despite being 44 minutes, Adventure Time's finale tried to do way too much, trying to fit in a ton of character resolutions without focusing on the biggest thing: Finn and Jake. I do believe that if this finale gave itself a lot less to do, it would have had a lot more time to focus on Finn and Jake. I think the final product is fine as it is, but I just wish it was a lot lighter in everything it set out to do, so that way we could have had more time with the characters we know and love. But one thing we can say about Adventure Time is that it brought things full circle. It gave us the ending that the adventure will always continue, and I honestly believe that each character ended in a pretty great spot. I mean, except for Simon and Betty, but at least Simon is Simon again. But that brings me to my next point and next example. What happens when there's a lack of full circle, especially with the characters you know and love? Well, we get finales like Voltron Legendary Defender, the end is the beginning. Now, it's no secret that Voltron Legendary Defender was kind of a huge show, but Jesus Christ, how did this happen? Now, the issues with the Voltron finale not bringing the main characters full circle kind of goes back to the entire season itself. Everything they built up to just kind of, stops. There's no big team dynamic. A lot of the main characters don't interact with one another. Shiro, the former leader of the team, doesn't really interact with anyone. A lot of people are written out of character. They do very impulsive, irrational things, and it doesn't really just make too much sense that they got to the conclusion that they arrived at with the building blocks of the first 6 or 7 seasons. Essentially, Hernerva, or Hagar, which really she's only the final antagonist because they killed off all the other antagonists and then oddly redeemed them in death. Yeah, anyways, she wants to find a universe where her husband Zarkon and her son Lotor, aka our former antagonist, are still alive so they can be one happy family again, if you want to call it a happy family. Anyway, she kind of manages to do so, but then baby Lotor's like, nah son, even in this universe, I just don't like you. And Hagar just snaps. She begins to string realities like crazy. The paladins are kind of just like, no, stop. And then she does because she realizes that she had happiness before Zarkon, which is like, yeah, no. Your life didn't begin at your significant other. And then to fix everything, Hernerva sacrifices herself with Allura. Allura, one of the main characters, pretty much just dies because, I don't know, it's finale and they had to kill someone off, and her goodbyes to the main cast is so stiff. But the bigger crime is, she doesn't have any kind of goodbye with Coran, her MVP, pretty much the only thing close to family she had left. How are you not going to give her a goodbye with her right-hand man? So aside from the stiff everything about their goodbyes and her sacrifice, the series concludes, they have a really forced epilogue, and I don't mean just because Shiro got married to a random character that we pretty much barely saw, I think like in the background a few times in other episodes. Like, yeah, you guys totally made up for Adam, But anyways, Lance kind of just becomes Altean in his goodbye with Allura, and then he dedicates the rest of his life just becoming an Altean farmer, surrounding himself with things that remind him of Allura. Like, I don't know if this is a healthy conclusion for this character. I think Keith has a decent ending. Debatably, Shiro does have a good ending. I mean, he still finds happiness. He still gets married. Yeah, okay, whatever. He still barely did anything this season. You guys still immediately kill off the character you promoted as his boyfriend. But above all else, this family spent so much time together, yet they all get their own individual, separate ways ending. Like, why? Nothing about any of the endings really feel full circle except for Keith, and I guess to an extent Paige and Hunk, but just telling us what happens to them after the fact and not actually giving each and every character individual arcs throughout this finale, having them play a crucial role throughout the finale that brings all their characters full circle, it just doesn't make for a good ending. If you're concluding something, make it an actual conclusion with the characters. Not just, and then they lived happily ever after to the end. That's not full circle. That's barely closure. I would say it's fan fiction, but even middle school fan fiction has way better writing and developed arcs than this. No, yeah, I didn't like Voltron's finale. But how about a finale I did enjoy very much? Taking us to our final example, not having enough time. With Gravity Falls, Wyrmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls. While I do truly love this finale, and the ending does get me really emotional and on the brink of tears every single time, seriously every single time, there's just one aspect of it that I don't jive with, and it's that despite having proper build-up for every moment, and nothing really being crammed in, they do not dedicate enough time for a lot of plot points. The Bill Cipher Zodiac, the thing that was at the end of the theme song for every single episode since day one. We learn of its purpose, sort of. We learn of everybody who's on the wheel, and then right before we see it in action, it just doesn't do anything. Stan and Ford mess up. And I don't mind the Zodiac failing, but if it was going to fail, I do think they should put a bit more time fleshing it out. Make it a back and forth struggle before it falls apart completely. Maybe it actually begins to work on Bill, but then Stan and Ford have a fight, which causes it to fail. But beyond that, there's a reunion between Ford and McGucket that's kind of just breezed over. Like, these two guys were best friends, they were partners. Science partners, not romantic partners, although yes, a lot of people think they were that too. I'm down for that ship. And we only really get like 30 seconds of them being like, alright, we're friends again, yay! Now this is fleshed out a lot more in Gravity Falls Journal 3, but then that just kind of tells me that they knew they rushed through it, and now they're retroactively trying to make up for it. Without a doubt, the biggest offender here is when Stan Pines loses his memory. Stan makes the biggest sacrifice and gives up his entire mind to defeat Bill Cipher, having everything in his mind erased, including Bill. Obviously, he was going to recover, but it happens just so instantaneous here that it really does undermine Stan's sacrifice. Now, the creator Alex Hirsch has actually come on and said throughout the years that yeah, he really does wish they had more time to flesh out and really see Stan in this state where he doesn't remember anything. That he wanted it to be more of an uphill battle of Stan recovering his memory, but he couldn't simply because Disney would not give them any more time. This is just one of the situations where I don't think the show staff could have fixed it. I don't think there's any way to really improve on it with what they were given. It's rushed, but they didn't really have a choice but to rush it. With all that said though, I can't help but to think, what's an example of a finale that isn't rushed? What animated series just stuck the landing, perfect 10 out of 10 could do no wrong? Regular shows, a regular epic final battle is without a doubt a masterpiece of of a conclusion. This hour-long finale managed to have a really emotional sacrifice that holds a lot of weight and punches the audience right in the gut. It has a good villain that works for the story. Anti-Pops wasn't phenomenal by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a good foil to Pops, and by extension, the cast. It had a lot of callbacks and set pieces that didn't feel rushed, and it truly embodies everything that people love about Regular Show, even ending the finale on David Bowie's Heroes. Not only was it a great tribute to the late Bowie, but Regular Show, especially in its first 2 seasons, was known for using songs from the 70s, 80s, 90s. However, this is something that greatly died down more and more as the show continued. So for the final scene of the series to not only be a flash forward that shows where the characters ended up, but to play this song, it really takes you back to the very beginning. But you really can't help but to shed a tear. The final exchange of the series being Mordecai and Rigby saying they should play the video games in the house for old time's sake, and going, oh, their iconic catchphrase, slogan, I don't know, mating call, whatever you want to call it. It was the perfect bookend. Regular Show had many ups and downs throughout its run, but its finale in particular was nothing short of phenomenal. They delivered, they had all the time they needed, and it was a great way of communicating. Even though it's the end, and sometimes sad things happen at the end, there is a future to look forward to. Your story doesn't end here. A new chapter of your life will await you. It does so many things right that any finale, especially an animated series, something that pushes its show and its concept to the very limits, with insane imagery, heartfelt moments, and a conclusive ending. I didn't want any more Regular Show after this. I'm fine. I'm chillin'. I'm beyond satisfied. So, with all of that said, the art of ending a cartoon is a complex one. It's not easy. It definitely takes a lot of work, and sometimes people don't stick the landing. I know a lot of cartoons in recent years have had rushed finales, as we talked about today, but again, that doesn't mean they're bad finales. And if you're someone who didn't think these finales were rushed, maybe this video helped you understand a different side of things. I'm not saying, oh yes, everything in here is right, factually, 100%, but rather, I do understand why certain things have the label of being rushed. I just think it's important people understand why that's said. But as always, I want to hear your thoughts, so please, drop your feelings about rushed cartoon endings and the endings discussed here in the comments below, or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids, and for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at OshrickVox. We're also on Instagram. Help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us over at Patreon. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like, and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. OshrickVox, signing out.